Hello, welcome to this conversation on the story of plastic, a film by Deia Schlosberg, who's with us here tonight. My name is Jochen Eisenbrand. I'm chief curator at the Vitra Design Museum. And this conversation is the first part of our program, educational program along the exhibition Plastic, Remaking Our World that we just opened this Friday here at the Vitra Design Museum, and that will be on show until September 4th. The film that we're about to talk about, the story of plastic, will be possible to be watched on our website until April 4th, so a week. The film deals with the global plastic pollution crisis and the role of the petrochemical industry and other large corporations in it, and grapples with similar issues that we're also addressing in our exhibition. We were to be joined also by Dianna Cohen, and she may drop into the conversation still. We're still hopeful, but we thought we'd already give it a go. The story of plastic premiered in 2019 at a film festival, and then on Discovery Channel in April 2020, Earth Day. It has been shown at numerous film festivals since and has won many awards, among them the Grierson Trust British Documentary Award, and it also won a News and Documentary Emmy in the category of Outstanding Writing. And there's Dianna. Wonderful.
Good morning. Hi,
Good
nice
morning.
to see you.
Great, you can join us. So we have two wonderful guests tonight. Deia Schlosberg graduated, had a BSc in Earth and Planetary Sciences and Visual Communications from Washington University in St. Louis. Then she went on a 7,800-mile trek in the Andes Mountain, and then also graduated from Montana State University with a Master of Fine Arts in Science and Natural History filmmaking. Dianna Cohen is an American visual artist and activist who is in her artistic work worked with plastic bags, among other media. And after learning of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, co-founded the Plastic Pollution Coalition in 2009, and of which she's also the co-founder. In 2019, she was named Environmentalist of the Year by SEMA. And she's also one of the executive producers of the film. I would like to mention at the beginning, you're most welcome as the audience watching to send in any questions you may have. And at the end of our conversation, we'd be happy to address any of them. So maybe to start, I was actually wondering how the two of you met and how you happened to collaborate on this film.
So we met, I think our direct link was 7, but we are very much in the same circles. The plastic pollution world is, I mean, worldwide, but fairly close. So I think we were bound to overlap at one point or another. And when this project came along, we were both eager to get involved.
Mm-hmm. So maybe you could actually untangle a bit the different initiatives and how they're connected. So there's the Plastic Pollution Coalition. There's Break Free from Plastic that played an important role in the film, and also the Story of Stuff. Could you elaborate a bit on that? How they're interconnected? Either of you?
Sure. I mean, the Story of Stuff is a US-based nonprofit that has been looking at issues of consumption of all different materials and products since, when did they start? 2007, I think. And most of their work is in communication of those ideas and in legislation and policy. And then the Break Free from Plastic global movement is kind of, it's like an umbrella group for all different organizations and individuals and just everybody working on these issues. It's a way for all of these parties to have like the same vision and long-term trajectory and goals, and make it more efficient, productive for everybody to work together in their own areas.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that the Plastic Pollution Coalition had already been around for a couple of years before the Break Free from Plastic initiative was launched. So was Plastic Pollution Coalition also engaged in creating that, or?
Yes, so Plastic Pollution Coalition helped create the Break Free from Plastic movement.
Mm-hmm.
But Plastic Pollution Coalition was co-founded in 2009. And, our original mission was to stop plastic pollution and to raise awareness about the toxic impact on human health, animal health, the ocean, waterways, and the environment. And that is still the work and the focus where we lay. But we are a coalition. Break Free from Plastic originally came out of a meeting in the Philippines, and an agreement that we all made called the Tagaytay resolution. And then we came up with a title for it, which is Break Free. So the idea of Break Free from Plastic is really, it's a movement, it's a hashtag. We add it to all the things that we do. And it really allowed more of a culmination to come together, because Plastic Pollution Coalition is a global coalition. But this really allowed, Break Free allowed the global South to come more directly into and have more of an administrative role, a stronger role in the whole movement, and also to expand what we were all looking at. So we've all learned, it's like a journey together, more about how plastic is primarily made from petroleum and fossil fuels, and expand that understanding so that we also are working with activists who are fence line and frontline activists, dealing with and living across the street from the petrochemical build-out industry, waste management facilities, incineration facilities, et cetera. So, I mean, I think together it's really helped expand everything. Mm-hmm. And our focus now with Plastic Pollution Coalition streams from our original mission statement, but it also includes working towards a more just, equitable world free of plastic pollution. Mm-hmm. And so really what we're focused on is primarily single-use plastics, because that feels like a kind of low-hanging fruit. And only the use of single-use plastics only became very prevalent at the end of World War II. So, that's something that has just come into fruition basically in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. I would say, though, the amount of damage, unfortunately, that, plastic is a wonderful material in certain ways, and in other ways, the way it impacts our health and the health of the planet, and the health of all living things is really something to grapple with. In particular, in the last week, we saw, information and a report come out that they're finding microplastics in human blood. Mm-hmm. And we've already been finding it in umbilical cord blood and in placenta, both on the mother's side and the baby's side. So, what is the impact of plastic in our bodies and the chemicals from plastic in our bodies? We understand some of it, and there's more to understand, but we know that the chemicals that are used to make plastic are endocrine disruptors. So they do affect our bodies, and they turn things on and off in our body. And I can talk more to that if you guys want to go down that path. But yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting issue. And I don't think I know that when I started and coming at it as a visual artist, I had no idea. I literally had no idea the real impact of this material. And I understand that better now. So.
I mean, from what you just said, and that was also an impression during our research, that there may have been a slow shift from the first initiatives, 2008, 2009, first looking at the actual pollution, and then kind of a shift towards looking at the sources of it, and that wasn't sort of in the forefront right from the beginning, but became ever more important to go upstream and to see, well, where does that come from?
Well, I think the reason that we created the coalition is because we realized that we needed to look at the entire life cycle, and we needed to go upstream. We could not just focus on what first attracted me to the issue was hearing about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and learning that a lot of plastic was getting into the ocean and seeing it firsthand as a swimmer, as a surfer, as a body surfer, as a diver. So seeing it firsthand, but then also realizing that the solutions to this problem do not lie in just cleanup. Mm-hmm. Not at all. And if anything, all this focus on only cleanup or the downstream solutions to it, are wonderful for industry. And that's why we see industry supporting these kinds of solutions, because it allows them to continue business as usual and manufacturing more and more and more plastic. The solution really doesn't lie in the cleanup. Yeah. The solution lies in all the different upstream points. And one of the upstream points, the penultimate upstream point, is the fossil fuel, the petrochemical industry, and that we need to stop making more plastic.
Yeah.
And another reason for the big shift is change in technology and change in global policy. So with the fracking boom that happened, especially, well, globally, but especially here in the US in the mid 2000s, all of a sudden there was a lot more material being produced. And with that, politically, our government pushed for a ban, an oil export ban. So oil and all petrochemical fossil fuel materials were able to be exported again after 2015 from the US. So that means all of these markets opened up to these companies and they started pushing their products on the rest of the world and forcing the markets to open, so that, that cycled, and there was more artificial demand, which created more material being produced, and it kind of snowballed. And in the last 15, 20 years, production has really ramped up because of those two things.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that ban. Why had it been there in the first place on exporting?
Oil export ban.
Did that have to do with the idea of peak oil and before sort of the new ways of all this fracking business was really established?
So I don't have a very top of the brain explanation, but it was started in 1975 and then lifted in 2015.
Oh, that was that embargo.
Yeah.
After the second oil crisis, I wasn't aware. Okay.
It was an OPEC policy.
Yeah.
OPEC decision.
And Deia, I also watched your film Backyard. So was that the story of plastic seems like a logic consequence of having seen that film, as if you'd gotten to the subject actually from the end of the fossil fuel.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you say a few words about that film and worth seeing and easy to watch on the internet as well? Highly recommended.
Yeah, thank you. I made that film as part of my grad school thesis, but it looks at fracking and the human effects, the effects of fracking on humans and on communities. And back when I released it in 2013, fracking wasn't the household word that it is now. So I think a lot of people didn't really realize. They do their best to kind of keep it hidden and keep the effects hidden, but I was trying to shine a light on those things. Yeah, and I mean, all throughout the making of the story of plastic, my experience making backyard was just there was a complete overlap. It was super relevant. I mean, that's the origin of all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, given that these people in Montana and Colorado and Pennsylvania are all that you're portraying, all living out in the country somewhere where this is happening, it's also easy to ignore or to not even notice, because these are places where many people just don't get to. Yeah,
it's easy to hide. And like the folks in Pennsylvania that we interviewed for the story of plastic, they all talk about this this myth that it's perpetuated, that it's for fuel to heat our homes and keep us warm and safe in the winter, and for autonomy over our own energy sources, and that's not the reality. The reality is it's being exported, it's being refined into different products and materials to make money for these companies. It's not a public utility. It's not serving the people that it's impacting. And that's across the board, all phases of production. That's the reality. This stuff does not serve the people that it's impacting. There's a huge disconnect.
No. So for the story of plastic, did you approach the Plastic Pollution Collection or Break Free from Plastic, or did they search you because they knew you had already done work in this area to do the film?
Yeah, the idea for the film and a tool kind of came out of the Break Free from Plastic community, and I had talked with one of the other producers of the film, Steve Wilson, years ago about doing a film that explored more the human impacts of the waste side of things. And that was before the oil export ban was lifted. So at that point, I didn't feel like my experience and my perspective would have brought it wouldn't have brought a new lens. It wouldn't have brought new information to that story. But once policy changed and once the movement was really in support of it, and it became more of an interconnected global systems conversation, then I felt like this is a story that hasn't been told yet. This is something that really needs to be made, and needs to be made as a look at the whole system and the stories that have been told about that system that are false.
That reminds me of Dianna. We had conversations before already. Dianna contributed to our exhibition catalog and the exhibition, and you said one of the main things is of calling things out and of naming issues by the right words, and sort of also changing narratives.
Yeah, I would say, the language that we use to describe things is so important. And when we first created the coalition, back in, we got together in 2008, but in 2009, it was so important to call it Plastic Pollution Coalition, because no one was calling this problem plastic. Nobody was identifying it as plastic. No one was calling it plastic. No one was calling it plastic pollution. They were calling it marine debris, litter, rubbish, waste, and garbage. And these are, interesting terms to use. They're very vague, they're very broad, and they also don't allow you to really identify the source problem. So, in fact, it's something that I learned from watching the conversations around climate change and global warming. There's no debate. It's not a debate as to whether climate change is happening or not. Climate change is happening. But that's kind of brilliant marketing by industry to tap on the word debate, to make something seem questionable. We decided to call the work we were doing Plastic Pollution and Plastic Pollution Coalition, because by calling it that, there's no question. This is what we're talking about, and this is what it is. And when we were looking at the data around what was being found and collected in cleanups from Ocean Conservancy, the top 10 or 20 items from beach cleanups are all made of plastic. And so it's not marine debris, it's plastic. And when it gets into the environment, it is plastic pollution. And we now know that plastic and the chemicals from plastic are polluting the planet and polluting us and polluting living things, our air, our water. You know, we're finding microplastics, not only, as I mentioned, in blood and placenta, but we're finding them in beer, in honey, in water, both tap water samples from around the world and the top 25 brands of bottled water from around the world. We're finding it's being ingested and taken up, eaten by wildlife in the ocean and wildlife on land. And that includes bivalves, clams and mussels and oysters, and bottom feeders, crabs, lobster, shrimp, etc. So, you know, it's something to consider, because many people in the world depend on wildlife from the ocean for their primary source of protein. Yeah, did I go off topic? Sorry there. I just I also just I wanted to say two other things too. You know, Plastic Pollution Coalition got involved in the making of the story of plastic film early in its inception through Stiv. And Stiv was working with Deia at that time, but he was very passionate about helping tell this story. And we were already working with a number of the frontline and fence line activists who were brave enough to share their stories in this film. It's a very brave, courageous film, because many people live in countries where it's risky to stick your neck out on the line and to go against the petrochemical industry and the industries that control, you know, the energy in your country or in the planet that we live on. So it's a very brave film. And we came in early on to help support in a small way. And then we came in later when the film was really pretty much completed to help with distribution and to help get this film seen by as many people as possible. And it was a wonderful, very fortuitous kismet between Deia and the filmmakers, the producers, and Discovery Channel and David Zaslav. And I feel that we're all so lucky to have been able to help contribute to creating this amazing documentary and to bringing these stories to people around the world. It's so important.
So how long did it take to make the film? And could you speak a bit about major challenges that you may have encountered?
So it took, super roughly, it was about a year of pre-production and research before the lifetimes of work that went into getting to that point. But dedicated research and scouting trips and stuff for a year, and then production took about a year, a couple of different major shoots all over the world, and then post-production took about a year. And
was it difficult to get shooting permits in any of the places? I was thinking of China, for instance. Could you just go there and film, or?
So China was tricky. The other filmmaker and I, the two of us that had all the technical background, that were doing all the shooting, didn't actually get our visas for China. So we applied really early. We don't know why. We don't know why they never went through. I made so many trips to the embassy. Mm-hmm. Never approved. We had our tickets. And what we ended up doing was using the 72-hour connecting flight window that we had to do all of China. So
wow.
So I think we bumped up our flights out of China to Indonesia so that we could, hit that 72-hour mark. They told us ahead of time that we might have to stay in the airport for that whole 72 hours, in this very sparse, depressing waiting area. But we took the risk because that's the only way it was going to happen. So we did. They let us out of the airport, and then we had amazing folks on the ground who helped us, who had sites lined up and hit the ground running and filmed what we filmed in China.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a big challenge. And that, it was such a huge part of the story because their scrap plastic import ban had just happened. So that threw the whole global waste trade into chaos for a little while and really brought a lot of attention to this whole issue. So that was a key piece of the story to capture.
Yeah, absolutely. That decision by China not to take on any of that scrap plastic anymore, that can't even be processed, that really, changed the game in a way, and made the problem even more urgent. And one doesn't notice that you had only 72 hours.
Good. I also think maybe it's that China's creating enough of their own that they don't need to import any waste in. But the big concern about importing or exporting waste or plastic and plastic pollution anywhere is that what is it for and what does it feed into? And if it's feeding into incineration or waste to energy or waste to fuel models, we're just creating, we're just transforming the material and burning it again. And that releases dioxins and particulate pollution, and we poison ourselves again. So
and it's also a problem of transparency. Where once these things are on a ship, and then where do they go to, and then and who's to keep track of it? I think that's a huge challenge. If it leaves countries to go to other countries, what international institution should keep track of that?
May I just say, I'm sorry, I have to go in a moment. I have a strategic planning meeting with my whole staff and I misread the time on my calendar. So I want to leave you guys to complete the conversation, and I'm sorry, I can't be part of it. I don't know if there was anything else important that I could help address before I jump off, and I love seeing you, Deia.
Likewise.
Of course, I still have a bunch of questions, but they were sort of to you both. So I think we can just carry on.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll
entrust
Deia for sharing what she can. And I would just, say to you guys, Plastic Pollution Coalition, we launched a new initiative at the end of last year. It's called Flip the Script on Plastic in Entertainment and Culture. And it's with a focus on looking at the prevalence of plastic and single-use plastic in film and television, and working with Hollywood, Bollywood, folks in the film industry in France, and really looking not just behind the scenes at the prevalence of single-use plastic within production, but looking at how it is portrayed on screen visually and in the storylines, and beginning to tell the real story about the true impact of plastic and use of plastic. So I hope that people will want to learn more about what we're working on, and I look forward to seeing you guys again, and congratulations on this exhibition.
Is it also like in feature films, how plastic items or single-use plastic is being used or not?
Yes, we commissioned the Norman Lear Media Center at USC's Annenberg School of Communication here in Los Angeles, California, to do a study looking at the top 32 television shows, also Spanish-speaking shows on Univision and Telemundo, at the prevalence of single-use plastic versus reusables in those shows. And and what we
assuming
saw,
that they're also kind of role models and influence
exactly
people watch.
exactly. So looking at the prevalence of those single-use plastics versus the use of reusables, like real cutlery, real glasses, reusable steel bottles, glass bottles, etc. So looking at that, and what we saw was that every of all the shows that we looked at, every single one had an average of 23 pieces of single-use plastic per episode.
Wow.
And each of the different series had at least one mass plastic event, which means an event where there was so much plastic, like some kind of party or something. So you could not count all of the plastic, all of the single-use plastic in that sequence. And so, you know, our goal with this is we are engaged now with SAG-AFTRA and the president of SAG-AFTRA, Fran Drescher, here in Hollywood, which is the union that represents the entertainment sector and actors and performers. And her first goal was to create a green council, and they're looking at how to phase out single-use plastic in productions. So it's a very exciting moment in time because people understand the health impact, the issues around it, that this costs a lot of money, that ultimately it's more than using reusables, and that reusables are better for everyone's health. So it's an exciting project. We're just at the beginning of it. It's called Flip the Script on Plastics. Yeah.
Great. Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, have a great continuation of the conversation.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
It reminds me a bit of the sort of banning cigarettes also from films, doesn't it? That's
yeah. And it's funny you brought that up because the whole industry narrative and this sowing doubt came from the cigarette industry, and just it's the same playbook to create doubt about negative impacts of smoke on human health, and then the climate, the whole doubt about climate change, and it's the same people that are creating these myths about plastic and petrochemicals. And yeah, it worked for tobacco, so they're sticking with it.
But coming back to the film, so you already mentioned some of the challenges in filming. What were some of the revelations you had? I assume some of the countries you may not have been to before filming, or at least some of those locations.
Yeah. Definitely.
Were there a moment where you were particularly odd or saw some things that you hadn't imagined?
Yeah, there's one scene in the film where we're at a scrap plastic waste site, which it was interesting to see these communities just flooded with scrap plastic because they sort through the scrap and pull out higher value materials and then can sell those materials. And so it really changed a few things in my head. One, it made me see this scrap plastic not just as a waste material, but as a resource. And folks would have huge heaps of this stuff on their yards, and then in their spare time between other jobs sort through and pull out higher value stuff. And so that was one kind of shift in how I saw things. The other thing that was interesting about that experience was people will see in the film Priggy, one of the main heroes, pulling out pieces of plastic and reading the labels and saying like, oh, Australia, oh, Oregon, US and France, and like that on the ground in East Java, there are materials from all over the world. And so often people are told and people think that it's a few countries in Asia that are pumping so much of this plastic into the ocean and that it's their fault.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is the plastic is shipped there from mostly global north, or a lot global north countries, and it's our plastic that's being flushed into the ocean that they have to deal with. So just, seeing, Bob's Red Mill packaging on the ground in Indonesia, and it's not sold there. Like, this is a brand that we in the US perceive as like green and healthy and natural.
Mm-hmm.
And not to call out Bob specifically, but just that is the system that things that we think of as being hyper local and positive are polluting the other side of the planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was one of the things I wasn't aware of before either. And in the research for the exhibition, we came across some initiatives who also started doing this brand auditing.
Yeah.
To put more pressure on the companies to also take responsibility for their packaging and what happens to it after it has been used. So that hopefully they may also change the type of packaging so that it's easier to process or to recycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one of the things you mentioned in your film that I hadn't been aware of either were these sachets that are used in some of these countries in the global south by companies that produce larger packaging that can be more easily recycled.
Mm-hmm.
And then in these countries have these really tiny things packaged so that you just for sort of one single use of shampoo.
And the companies say that it's a pro-poor decision because people can buy smaller quantities and spend less money. And the reality is a lot of people don't want that. They want to buy things in more sustainable packaging, and it's just not available. Like you can only find those sachets. So you often see at the markets people going to buy a shampoo, and they're not buying one or two little sachets because that's all they can afford. They're like, there's a reel of them, and they're like pulling like a month's worth of these sachets, and it's that's not the truth on the ground. People don't want that material. They're not asking for that material.
It's supply driven and not demand driven.
Exactly.
That's the issue.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask about some of your film making techniques, and that's something I noticed in the backyard as well as in the story of plastic, that you combine these very personal stories, which sort of engaged or help the visitor to engage, and then you use animations to explain more abstract or more complex issues. Could you talk a bit about that? Or
I mean, I've always been fascinated with the idea of animated documentary, because there's certain things in doc that you can't film, like concepts and things that happen, outside of the scope of the camera. And I mean, one technique is to try to explain and just show examples from the real world and show B-roll. But I don't think that that conveys the complexity of a lot of these things, as well as something more plastic. I'm using plastic as an adjective. Conceptually plastic as animation, so you can, play with scale and time and show things that you can't in the physical world. So I love using animations as a tool.
Mm-hmm. Were the animations, were those the same animation artists in Story of Plastic that did also the animations for the Story of Stuff?
No.
No.
Oh yeah, the Story of Stuff. Yes. Ruben de Luna is the animator. And yeah, he's been with Story of Stuff since the beginning in 2007 and earlier when I started working on it. And yeah, it's become like the signature Story of Stuff style. And we wanted to continue that style. So there was continuity, uniformity in their work, but also make it a little more filmic. So we added some more depth. We added, we played with the transitions between the live action and animated bits. So we took their style and made it just a little different, since we were going to be going back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Another part that I really liked about your film was the historic footage that you found. Quite amazing, and we did quite a bit of research for our exhibition as well, and we're showing some like advertised or commercials from companies like DuPont from the 50s, and that show how these companies also promoted the use of plastics in packaging, for instance. And there's some I wish we would have found that you have in your film. How did you go about finding these?
So there were, there's a couple great archive sites that are very searchable, and we had it, it was the difficulty was in choosing which ones to use. There was so much material, which was not the problem I thought we would have. I thought we would have a lot more trouble finding the material, and that especially the more current archival footage of like shareholder meetings and meetings of these fossil fuel company execs talking about what their plans were for plastics. I thought that would be harder to find, but it's public domain. There's, a lot of this material is just out there if you look for it.
So it also wasn't.
They're not hiding it.
It wasn't a rights issue either, then.
No. The way that we used it. Why am I spacing on the term? But in documentary, you can.
Oh, fair use.
You can clear a lot of the material as fair use if it's for educational purposes. So we were able to do that. But yeah, we didn't have to pay to access that material. Like the original source material is publicly available.
And did you ever consider actually interviewing industry representatives as a sort of counterpoint?
Kind of. I thought about doing that, but not. So the reason I didn't want to do that is, first of all, because they're not going to tell us anything that they don't already have out there as their public relations, statements, and like they've invested tons and tons of money into how they want themselves to be portrayed and represented, and the exact language, as Dianna was saying, the words we use are so important, and they've crafted that. So we weren't going to get anything different out of an interview with one of their PR people as what they already put out there themselves that we can find. The other thing is, I try to avoid the straw man argument, where we have like one or two representatives of the side that we're criticizing, that we like gang up on and attack. It puts it not necessarily because it's unfair for us to do that to them, but because they're massive. They control so much of the world. And if we were to do that narratively, it would seem as if we're ganging up on these individual humans, and create like sympathy for those humans, where they are just representative of this massive global system that is taking advantage of actual individual humans that don't have any recourse. And I didn't want to give them any more of a platform than they already have. Whatever they want to say, they can put out into the world. They don't need my help.
Yeah, there's something to that. Even though I sometimes I think, it would also be good if there could be a dialogue, because in the end, of course, it is also the large industries and corporations that have to change,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
that's the bulk of all
Right.
the stuff that's going out. And
yeah. And I do think there are people at those corporations that want to change. I believe a lot of the people that work there probably went there to try to change things, knowing that it's the industry that needs to change. And I just heard an amazing interview recently with a guy that worked at ExxonMobil for 16 years, thinking that he was going to be part of that change, and that they were looking more at green energy, and he wanted to work on that side of things, and kept believing that that's what was gonna happen. And he just kept getting shut down over and over and over, and finally realized he was that wasn't the reality of what they were doing.
How did you, or how did you perceive how your film was received in different countries? Given the pandemic, that may have been difficult, but did you get different reactions, say, from the US, Europe, Asia, Africa, South America?
Not being at screenings in person was really challenging, to get that audience read and the feeling in the moment, what people are reacting to. So I don't feel like I have I don't feel like I have as a strong a sense as usual of how things are received. But anecdotally, I know people really like the film, and it's being requested all over the world. It's being requested by a lot of schools and groups of young people, which is really exciting and encouraging. We've been invited to festivals around the world, without having to submit to most of them. They're coming to us. So it, and the groups that, a lot of the member organizations that are part of the Break Free from Plastic movement are using it as the tool that they wanted it to be, to show how their part of the work fits into the whole, and to bring resources in for them to further that work. So it's been, that's always my ultimate measure of how successful a documentary is, if the people that are in it feel like they're truthfully represented. And we were fortunate enough to have several of the folks in the film come to our premiere at Mill Valley Film Festival, and their reaction is really all I needed. Like they felt seen, they felt like they were able to see their work in a new light as part of something bigger, and it gave them more hope and more confidence. And that's what I mean, ultimately what I hope to be able to do with film.
Mm. So do you think that's one of the main parts where we have leverage to educate and to give voices to those who are not seen otherwise?
Yeah, they're doing incredible work and so dedicated and strong, and I was just in awe of people the whole time that we were talking with and filming with. And yeah, I mean, I just want them to get all the backing and support that they could possibly get, because they're doing what is needed and what is right, and they are on the right side of history. They yeah, anything positive they can get, they deserve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What is the next project you're working on?
So I've been working on a documentary series called Bootstraps for the last almost 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it totally overlapped with the story of plastic. That's looking at universal basic income. So we followed 11 households around the US who were receiving a basic income, $1,000 per adult and a third of that per kid.
From whom? Receiving it from whom?
Well, so it was through an organization that mostly works with progressive causes. We ended up having to do the fundraising for that trial because a lot of the trials that were happening didn't want us filming because it would impact the data. They were doing sociological studies and economic studies, and they didn't want people to feel too watched. So after getting shut down by every trial that was happening, we realized that if we were going to tell the stories of people going through a trial, we would have to make that happen. So so that's the first big part of the project. But then we were able to fundraise enough for 11 households to get 2.5 years of a basic income, and we documented how it changed their lives and
Mm-hmm.
the outcomes.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's been really fascinating.
And when will that be screened or presented? Not.
We're about to pitch to the distributors that are our top choices for distribution partners.
Mm-hmm.
We're just finishing up our pitch materials, and yeah, like in the next month, hopefully we'll start to have some of those answers of when and where it'll be available.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, we're looking forward to it.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank
this
you.
interesting conversation, and thank you very much for sharing the film with us and our visitors and audience. And yeah, hope many more people will be watching it over the next week.
Thank you. Thank you for spotlighting it and spotlighting the issue.
Yeah, very much in the spirit of our exhibition as well.
Yeah, great.
All right, then take care.
All right, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.